The Samsung Galaxy S7 is often considered to be one of the best Androids of all time by tech enthusiasts, and for good reason. It offered one of the most complete experiences available when it came out, along with a gorgeous design. But that was all the way back in 2016. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy S7. How does it hold up 5 years later? The Galaxy S7 might be considered one of the best Samsungs of all time, but its predecessor is often called one of the worst. The 2015 Galaxy S6 might have brought the new premium glass design the S7 had, but it also removed a plethora of features that often were the reason people bought a Galaxy in the first place. Things like a microSD card slot, water resistance, easy repairability, or battery swapping. It gave them a much more lockdown experience akin to Apple, despite Samsung's constant marketing and reputation of them being the opposite. Even if the phone's design was fantastic for the time, at least in my opinion, fans were justifiably upset. And so the next year, Samsung managed to right the ship with the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge, two phones that looked the same as the S6, but brought back a lot of features as well as an array of typical yearly improvements. It was just a really solid, reliable phone, and ultimately I think that's what people really want. But we are 5 years down the road, and while the feelings around the S7 haven't changed, the phone is still getting older. The S7 is almost always near the top of people's favorite Galaxy phones, looking around forums and on the web, often even ahead of other favorites like the S5 or the S8, which of course the S8 had that near bezel-less redesign, so people really liked the S7, and it makes sense. This phone was a near perfect compromise between the accessibility of Samsung's past with things like expandable storage, but it also had the future with a truly premium experience, no more plastic for iPhone users to scoff at. Before we get too deep into the design, I want to speak to the relevancy this phone still holds half a decade later, because as you would expect, there are still people using it, and it still fetches around $100 on eBay.com. But it's a good few versions of software behind, stuck on Android 8, and the phone doesn't provide the same performance that it used to. That being said, it's still absolutely usable, and in fact, until just recently, my friend had it as his main phone. He finally upgraded to the iPhone 11, and so now he gave me the phone to review, lucky me. If you're still one of the few using the S7 nowadays, I do recommend considering a new phone if you're ready. The S7 works, but the battery life especially is just going to be brutal in most cases, and the phone is feeling a bit slow as I use it, although not terrible. But with a newer Galaxy or an iPhone or whatever you want, you'll be getting faster specs, a better camera, and probably most importantly, a brand new battery. If you were somehow considering buying the Galaxy S7 for your main phone, I have to recommend against it, as I think it's just a bit too old, mostly thanks to it being so far behind in updates. As a backup phone, maybe, but I think for only $100 you can find something better. The iPhone 7, for example, is around that price, and while the battery is likely probably pretty bad too, it actually is still on the latest version of iOS. So if you're not too dedicated to the Android side, that's an option. Regardless, I doubt there's much of a market for this phone, and most of us are probably more just curious to see how it stands today as is, so let's start by looking at that design. We have a glass front and back with an aluminum frame, giving the phone a very premium look and feel that again had been introduced a year earlier with the S6. It's honestly great. I think this phone is really comfortable to hold and use, and the 5.1-inch AMOLED display here with a pixel density of 577 pixels per inch is absolutely gorgeous. Of course, there's the S7 Edge, which features a 5.5-inch screen with the same resolution, so it does have a technically lower pixel density and thus slightly lower quality than the regular S7, but you'd be hard-pressed to see any difference in real-life use. They're both great screens, and they're OLED. That means true blacks, vibrant colors. The displays on some of these older Samsungs hold up so well. You do have to watch out for a burn-in. Burn-in is something when a single image is left onto a screen for too long, an OLED screen. The picture leaves kind of like a remnant or an outline of what used to be there permanently. It happens. My Galaxy S9 has pretty bad burn-in, so if you are gonna for whatever reason buy an S7 nowadays, just watch out for that. Why is the S7 Edge called the Edge? Well, the curved edges, with the screen falling over the sides giving a very immersive experience experience. This here is my S6 Edge, by the way, as I don't have the S7 Edge, but it looks basically the same. The curved sides aren't really my thing personally, as I find it can make for a lot of accidental touches when using the phone, and there aren't too many practical uses for it besides it looking cool. There's also a third model of the phone called the S7 Active, which is basically a more rugged version of the phone with a bigger battery. Looking at S7 colors, we've got a few options with black, gold, white, silver, and pink, as well as a very light coral blue. And I have here the black. I have to say I do miss the dark blue I have on my S6 Edge. It's one of my favorite smartphone colors ever, but I digress. The back of the phone is fairly simple, with the big camera sensor and minor camera bump in the top middle of the phone in classic Samsung fashion. It's got that square camera look, gotta love it, and the Samsung word mark is right underneath. What I really hate about the design is actually turning to the front and looking at those bezels. Now I actually don't hate the bezels, I hate the Samsung logo, which is again right on the top under the speaker grill. Why? Why do we need two Samsung logos here? Why did Samsung do this for so many years? I don't think users need to be reminded that they're using a Samsung every time they look at their phone, but at least this was gone the next year with the S8 and its reduced bezels. We also have a notification LED up there, which some users still swear by nowadays. The bezels here I don't have a problem with. For 2016 they were typical, and it means we get a physical home button with a fingerprint sensor that does the job, although it's not the fastest. Beside the home button on both sides we have capacitive touch buttons, one for multitasking and one to go back. This was something Samsung's had for years before the S8 would get rid of the home button and make it digital only, and I always actually really liked them, even if aesthetically they're pretty ugly when they light up. Why do I like them? Well, I think of all the Android phones that had thick, giant bezels back in the day, like say the 2016 Google Pixel, most of them did nothing with the space. Not even a physical home button. You would have a digital home button taking up even more room above the giant bezel. I don't understand why manufacturers thought this was a good idea. It made the bottom of the phone completely useless, and you might as well just cram all the navigation stuff down there like the S7 does, so props to Samsung for that. I think the aspect of this phone that holds up the worst design-wise definitely isn't the bezels, it's the micro USB for charging. That's right, Samsung, the company known for having wireless charging and fast charging so early on, still didn't use USB-C in 2016, which is a bit of a yikes. It was fairly early still, but a lot of the big companies had moved over, and in the very least Samsung would bring it with the S8. The camera is 12 megapixels, which is an actual decrease from the 16 megapixel count in the S6, but the S7 does take better pictures. There's a reason most phones have stuck around 12 megapixels for so long. There's only so big you can force photos with those little camera sensors. And photos here are fine. It's a 2016 smartphone, so it's important to keep expectations low, but with good lighting you can absolutely take a nice shot. Move indoors or in poor lit situations and things get a bit rougher, but ultimately it does the job and it's going to capture moments and memories as you require. It can film video in 4K at 30 frames per second, which is good numbers wise, but it looks pretty mediocre in real life use, although it could definitely be worse. It's amazing just how much camera tech in smartphones has improved in the last half decade, but the S7 manages to hold up better than I think many might have expected. The selfie camera, on the other hand, it's 5 megapixels and it's just not very good. Maybe kind of typical for 2016, but it does not hold up well today. All in all, it's a 2016 smartphone and has a 2016 smartphone camera. It is what it is, and I think it's still decent enough, especially with ideal lighting, to take a nice picture. If you were to get the Google Pixel camera app for the S7, it definitely improves things as Google's photo tech is fantastic, so just look up Google Pixel camera APK for the S7 and you'll find lots of resources on how to do that. So 12 megapixels, not bad, and most numbers on this phone actually hold up. We have the Snapdragon 820 and 4 gigabytes of RAM, at least in North America, with there also being an Exynos 8890 version in some areas of the world. Honestly, there's not a huge variation in performance from either side, at least for the most part. The 4 gigabytes of RAM is pretty good for 2016, and it's enough for the version of Android this thing is stuck on, even with some lag being more frequent than I would like. For storage, we have 32, 64, or 128 gig options, but again, you can put in a micro SD card up to 256 gigs, so that's awesome. As mentioned earlier, and when it comes to most older phones, battery life really holds you back. The more it's been used over the years, the worse the phone is going to be today. Unless you want to go through the hassle of replacing your battery, or you have a device that's actually doing okay somehow, it's going to be in your best interest to get a better and newer smartphone, which shouldn't be a surprise for anybody. This phone is a half-decade old, and Samsung is notorious for giving barely any updates past release. Of course, there are some unofficial methods to update things, but I'll let you look into that for yourself if you're interested. it. I think that actually might be the way to go if your phone is feeling slow and you're pretty savvy with tech, or maybe a factory reset if you can save your data externally. Android 8 is old, but not completely obsolete. You can still download and use the vast majority of apps, even if it's a bit slow. Ultimately, the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge are terrific phones that are just old. That's the problem. While the hardware here doesn't feel 5 years old, the phone is 5 years old, and so while you can still do various things to rectify that, it doesn't change the truth. It's been around for half a decade, which is insane, and in the very least we can remember it forever as one of the best Android phones of all time, providing one of the most complete and premium Samsung experiences we've ever seen. Any of you out there still using the Galaxy S7? Make sure you let me know in the comments down below. If you found this video interesting, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech if you'd like to, for some reason. With that all being said, thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91tech, and I will see you all next time.